The great chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest room Ambassador Nora Sullivan had ever seen. Floating platforms held representatives from 12 different alien species, each one stranger than the last. Some were made of living crystal that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. Others were serpent-like creatures that coiled around themselves as they spoke. A few were so alien that Nora still couldn't figure out which part was the face. She had been speaking for almost an hour now. Her throat was dry, and her patience was running thin, but she kept her voice calm and professional. This was her third appeal to the Council in as many months, and each time they gave her the same answer. The Vrekshi swarm has consumed 17 inhabited worlds, Nora said, pointing to the holographic map that floated in the center of the chamber. Red dots marked the dead planets, spreading like a disease through the outer regions of the galaxy. They are not stopping. They are not negotiating. They eat everything in their path, and they are heading straight for human space. High Counselor Threx, a towering being made of purple crystal, made a gesture with one of his many arms. Nora had learned that this meant he was about to say something dismissive. Ambassador Sullivan, the Vrekshi are concerning, yes. But they are hardly an existential threat to the galaxy. The Council has dealt with such matters before. We will form committees. We will discuss possible responses. We will consider sanctions against any species that trades with them. With respect, High Counselor, your committees take decades to reach decisions. The Vrekshi will reach Earth in 18 months. Then perhaps humanity should consider relocation. There are many suitable worlds in the Outer Rim. We could provide assistance in moving your population to safer regions. Nora stared at the crystal being for a long moment. Around the chamber, other representatives shifted in their seats. The Pelorians, small furry creatures about the size of Earth cats, exchanged worried glances with each other. They were known for their ability to sense emotions, and something in the room had just changed. I understand, Nora said quietly. Her voice had lost its pleading tone. I will inform Earth of your decision. Ambassador Sullivan called out Representative Keth, a serpent-like Morav, whose scales shimmered green and gold. What exactly will humanity do? Nora paused at the door of the chamber. When she turned back to face them, her expression was calm. To calm, fine, she said. We'll deal with it. The doors closed behind her, and the chamber erupted in quiet conversation. Most of the representatives dismissed the exchange as human drama. They had seen many young species come and go. Humanity was barely a century old in terms of galactic presence. What could they possibly do against a swarm that had destroyed civilizations 10 times their age? But Fen, a Pelorian observer who had spent 30 years studying humans, felt something cold run through his small body. He had dedicated his career to understanding this strange species from the third planet of an unremarkable star. He had read their history. He had studied their wars. He had learned about their capacity for both great kindness and terrible violence. And he had felt what was behind Ambassador Sullivan's words. Not anger, not fear. Something far more dangerous, determination. Fen activated his personal communicator and contacted the Pelorian Archive Division. I need everything we have on human military history, he said, keeping his voice low so the other representatives wouldn't hear. Specifically, I need to understand what happens when humans decide to solve a problem themselves. Over the next 3 days, human diplomatic vessels began leaving the galactic capital. They departed quietly, without ceremony or explanation. Embassy staff packed their belongings and boarded transports back to Earth. Cultural exchange programs were canceled. Trade negotiations were put on hold indefinitely. The Galactic Council barely noticed. They were busy with their committees and their discussions. The Vrekshi problem would be addressed in due time, they assured themselves. There was no need for hasty action. On Earth, the mood was very different. Fleet Admiral Benjamin Cole stood before the largest gathering of human leaders ever assembled. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, scientists, and industrial leaders filled the auditorium. For the first time in human history, there were no national flags displayed. There was only the blue and green banner of Earth. The Council has abandoned us, Admiral Cole said. His voice was steady, but those who knew him could see the anger burning in his eyes. They expect us to run. They've already written us off as another minor species that reached too far and paid the price. He pulled up a holographic display showing the approaching Virexi swarm. Millions of organic ships, each one carrying thousands of drone soldiers bred for one purpose: consumption. They're wrong about us. The room was silent as Cole outlined a plan that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. Every factory on Earth would switch to military production. Every orbital station, every lunar colony, every mining operation in the asteroid belt would contribute to the effort. The entire human species would focus on one single goal: survival. We have 14 months, Cole said. 14 months to build a fleet larger than anything humanity has ever created. 14 months to develop weapons that don't exist yet. 14 months to prepare for a war that no one thinks we can win. General Patricia UN of the Pacific Defense Force raised her hand. Admiral the Virexi have destroyed civilizations that had thousands of years to prepare. What makes you think we can succeed? Cole smiled, though there was no warmth in it. Because those civilizations fought the way the galaxy expected them to fight. Measured responses. Limited warfare. Rules designed for conflicts between reasonable species. I paused. The Virexi are not reasonable. They are a swarm that consumes everything in its path. And humanity has never been good at limited responses when our survival is threatened. He pulled up historical images that made some of the alien observers in the room uncomfortable. Mushroom clouds rising over ancient cities. Fleets of warships darkening the oceans. Soldiers charging into certain death because the alternative was unthinkable. We have spent 50 years being good galactic citizens, Cole continued. We limited our weapons. We kept our fleet small. We followed the rules that the Council set for us. That ends today. The room erupted in questions and concerns, but Cole held up his hand for silence. I won't lie to you. Many of us will die. The cost will be higher than anything we've ever paid. But our children will live. Our species will survive. And when it's over, the galaxy will never dismiss humanity again. Meanwhile, in his small quarters on the Pelorian homeworld, Fenn continued his research into human history. What he found kept him awake at night. He learned about something called total war. A concept so alien to most galactic species that there was no proper translation for it. He read about weapons that could destroy entire cities in a single flash. He studied battles where humans had fought to the last soldier rather than surrender, and he began to understand why. Ambassador Sullivan's words had felt so dangerous. When humans decided to deal with something, they didn't stop until it was finished. No matter the cost, no matter how long it took, no matter what they had to become. Fenn tried to warn the Council, but they wouldn't listen. Humanity was just another young species, they said. Nothing to worry about. Fenn knew they were wrong. Something was coming. Something the galaxy had never seen before. And by the time they realized it, it would be far too late. Earth had never been so busy. From the highest mountain peaks to the deepest ocean floors, every corner of the planet hummed with activity. Factories that had once built cars and televisions now produced weapons and armor plating. Universities that had studied stars and galaxies now focused on ways to destroy enemy ships. Children went to school during the day and helped their parents pack supplies at night. Admiral Benjamin Cole stood at the window of the Global Defense Command Center, watching cargo ships rise into the sky one after another. Each one carried materials to the orbital shipyards where humanity's new fleet was taking shape. In just 3 months, they had built more warships than in the previous 50 years combined. It still wasn't enough. Admiral said Commander Lisa Morgan, entering his office with a tablet in her hands. She was young for her position, barely 40 years old, but she had one of the sharpest tactical minds in the fleet. The latest production reports. We're ahead of schedule on hull construction, but the weapon systems are lagging behind. Cole took the tablet and studied the numbers. What's the problem? Power cores. The antimatter reactors we designed are more powerful than anything we've built before, but they keep failing safety tests. Dr. Samuel Green thinks he can solve it, but he needs another month. We don't have another month. Lisa nodded slowly. I know, sir. That's why I'm here. There's another option, but you won't like it. Cole looked at her with tired eyes. He hadn't slept properly in weeks, and the weight of his responsibility showed in every line on his face. Tell me, remove the safety limiters. The reactors will work, but they'll be unstable. If they're hit in combat, they won't just fail. They'll explode. Every ship we build will essentially be carrying a bomb in its heart. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. He walked back to the window and watched another cargo ship rise into the darkening sky. Somewhere up there, thousands of workers were welding hull plates and installing weapon systems, knowing that they might be building their own graves. Do it, he said finally. But make sure every crew member knows what they're signing up for. No one goes into battle without understanding the risks. Lisa saluted and left the office. Cole remained at the window, thinking about the choices that had led them here. A year ago, he had been looking forward to retirement. Now he was sending young men and women to fight a war that might destroy them all. On the Mars colony, similar scenes were playing out. The Red Planet had always been humanity's backup plan, a second home in case something happened to Earth. Now it was becoming a fortress. Underground factories carved into the Martian rock produced missiles and drones around the clock. Surface installations were being converted into defensive platforms that could track and destroy enemy ships before they even reached orbit. Governor Patricia Yuen, who had transferred from her military position to oversee Mars defense, walked through the tunnels with her chief engineer. The walls around them echoed with the sounds of drilling and welding. How long until the defense grid is operational? She asked. 6 weeks, Governor. Maybe 5 if we push the crews harder. Push them. But make sure they get enough rest. Tired workers make mistakes, and we can't afford mistakes right now. The engineer nodded and hurried off to relay her orders. Patricia continued walking until she reached a large viewing chamber carved into the side of Olympus Mons, through the thick glass. She could see the Martian sunset painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Somewhere beyond that sky, beyond the comfortable boundaries of human space, the Vrexy swarm was getting closer. Every day they consumed more worlds, added more biomass to their endless hunger. Every day the deadline drew nearer. Back on Earth, Dr. Samuel Green worked in his laboratory with the kind of focused intensity that had made him one of humanity's leading scientists. Screens covered every wall, displaying equations and diagrams that would have been meaningless to most people. But to Green, they were the key to survival. The problem isn't the reactors themselves, he explained to his team of researchers. It's the containment fields. We're trying to hold more power than the fields were designed for. It's like trying to hold an ocean in a teacup, so we make bigger teacups, suggested one of the younger scientists, a woman named Amy Chen. Green shook his head. We don't have time to redesign the whole system. We need a different approach. He stared at the equations on the screen, his mind racing through possibilities. What if we don't try to contain the power? What if we let it flow freely and just direct it where we want it to go? The room fell silent as the implications sank in. It was a crazy idea. It went against everything they had learned about reactor design. But it might just work. They spent the next 2 weeks testing the new approach. There were failures. There were explosions that required evacuation of entire sections of the laboratory. But slowly, breakthrough by breakthrough, they made progress. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council continued its endless deliberations. Committees met and discussed and produced reports that no one read. High Counselor Threx gave speeches about the importance of careful consideration. The Moravi representatives proposed diplomatic missions to the Vrexy, apparently unaware that the swarm didn't negotiate, only fend the Pelorian. Paid attention to what was happening in human space. Using long-range sensors and careful observation, he tracked the changes taking place on Earth and its colonies. What he saw filled him with a mixture of awe and terror. Humans weren't just building a fleet. They were transforming their entire civilization into a weapon. He tried again to warn the Council. He showed them sensor data, production estimates, weapon specifications that he had pieced together from intercepted communications. The crystal beings and the serpent people and all the other ancient species listened politely and then dismissed his concerns. They're just humans. said High Counselor Threx with a wave of his crystalline arm. Young, emotional, prone to overreaction. They will build their little fleet, they will fight their little battle, and they will lose. It is sad, but it is the way of the galaxy. Weak species, come and go. With respect, High Counselor, Fen said, fighting to keep his voice calm, I don't think you understand. Humans don't think like we do. When they commit to something, they commit completely. They don't have our sense of proportion or our instinct for self-preservation. They will fight until there is nothing left of them to fight with. Then they will die quickly instead of slowly. What difference does it make? Fen wanted to scream. He wanted to shake the ancient counselor until he understood. But he knew it would do no good. The council had made up its mind about humanity long ago. Nothing would change it now, so he did the only thing he could. He returned to the Pelorian homeworld and began quietly advising his people to avoid human space. Something terrible was going to happen there. He could feel it in his bones. In the shipyards orbiting Earth, the first of the new warships was completed. It was called the Indomitable, and it was unlike anything humanity had ever built before. Angular and aggressive, bristling with weapons that the galactic community didn't even know existed. It hung in the darkness of space like a predator waiting to strike. Admiral Cole inspected the ship personally, walking through corridors that still smelled of fresh paint and welding sparks. The crew stood at attention as he passed, young faces full of determination and fear in equal measure. This ship is the first of many, Cole said in his address to the crew. You are the first to serve on a vessel built specifically to fight the Vrekshi. You are the first to carry weapons that we never wanted to create, and you may be the first to die defending humanity from extinction. He paused, looking at each face in turn. I won't promise you victory. I won't promise you survival, but I will promise you this. What you do here matters. Every day you fight is another day for Earth, another day for Mars, another day for every human being who is counting on us. Make it count. The crew saluted, and Cole felt something stir in his chest. Pride, perhaps. Or maybe just hope. They had 11 months left. The Vrekshi swarm entered the Kepler system, expecting an easy meal. They had done this hundreds of times before, across thousands of years. Find a planet with life, surround it, consume everything, move on. The pattern never changed, because it never needed to change. No species had ever stopped them, the Swarm Mother. A creature the size of a small moon drifted at the center of 4 million bioships. Each ship was a living thing, grown from the genetic material of 1,000 consumed species. Each one carried thousands of drone soldiers. Mindless creatures bred for a single purpose, to eat and to kill. They had received reports about the humans. A young species, barely out of their home system, weak, divided, primitive. The Swarm Mother dismissed the reports with the closest thing to boredom that her ancient mind could feel. She had consumed species far older and far stronger. These humans would be no different. Then her scouts reached the colony world and found it empty. The humans were gone. The buildings stood abandoned, the fields were bare, the cities silent. But more troubling than the empty planet was what waited in the space above it. Ships. Human ships. Hundreds of them, arranged in a formation that the Swarm Mother didn't recognize. They were smaller than Vexi bioships, built from dead metal and cold machines. But there was something about them that made the Swarm Mother pause. They weren't running. Admiral Lelina Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Indomitable. Watching the Vexi swarm approach on her tactical display, the organic ships looked like a cloud of insects, so many that they blocked out the stars behind them. Any other species would have fled at the sight, but humans weren't any other species. Admiral reported Lieutenant Kevin Park from the tactical station, the swarm is entering weapons range. Estimated count, 4 million bioships carrying approximately 200 million drones in our fleet. 347 vessels, ma'am. The numbers were absurd. They were outnumbered more than 10,000 to 1. By any reasonable calculation, they should already be dead. Alina smiled. Open a communication channel. The response from the swarm came as a horrible clicking sound that made the bridge crew wince. The translation software struggled to make sense of it, but the message was simple enough. Surrender your biomass. Join the swarm. Resistance is pointless. Alina leaned forward in her chair. Tell them this. You've made a terrible mistake. You should have stayed in the Outer Rim. You should have left us alone. Now it's too late. She cut the channel and turned to her weapons officer. Commander, you may fire when ready. What followed would be studied by military historians for centuries. Later, other species would call it the Kepler Massacre. Humans preferred a different name, the Kepler Statement. The first wave of missiles didn't carry explosives. They carried something far worse. Humanity had spent centuries developing ways to kill each other. And in the past year, they had refined those methods to terrifying precision. The warheads that struck the Vrexy swarm contained biological agents designed to dissolve organic matter, radiatio, and weapons that cooked living tissue from the inside out, and chemical compounds that turned flesh into soup. The swarm mother felt millions of her. Children die in the first 30 seconds. Not just die, but be unmade, dissolved, erased from existence in ways that her ancient mind couldn't comprehend. For the first time in a million years, the Vexy swarm felt fear. They tried to retreat, but the human fleet was already moving. The angular warships cut through space with a speed that should have been impossible, circling around the swarm and cutting off escape routes. More missiles launched. More bioships died. The void of space filled with the debris of Vrixy corpses. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Elena watched the battle unfold with cold efficiency. Around her, the crew worked their stations with grim determination. No one cheered when a Vrexy ship exploded. No one celebrated when the swarm mother began her desperate retreat. They all knew what they were doing. They all understood the line they were crossing. Admiral, said Lieutenant Park, his voice strained, the swarm is breaking formation. They're trying to scatter. Don't let them. Every ship that escapes is a ship that can come back. We end this here today. The battle lasted 6 hours. By the end, the void around Kepler was a graveyard. 2 million Vexy bioships drifted lifelessly through space, their organic hulls split open and frozen. 100 million drone soldiers had died without ever reaching a human ship. The swarm mother herself had been destroyed, torn apart by a coordinated strike that left nothing but debris. Human losses, 17 vessels. 4,000 personnel. Alina stood at the window of her quarters that night, looking out at the carnage they had created. In the distance, she could see rescue ships moving through the wreckage, searching for survivors from their destroyed vessels. There wouldn't be many. She felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to find Commander Lisa Morgan standing behind her. Duh. The fleet is asking for orders, Admiral. The Vrexy home systems are 3 weeks away. Intelligence says they've sent everything they had at us. Their core worlds are barely defended. Alina nodded slowly. She had known this moment would come. She had prepared for it, planned for it, told herself she was ready for it. She wasn't ready. She would never be ready for what they were about to do. Set course for the Vrexy homeworld, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. All ships. Maximum speed, Admiral. Are we really going to? Yes. Alina turned to face Lisa, and the younger woman saw something terrible in her commander's eyes. Not anger. Not hatred. Just an awful, hollow certainty. We're going to finish this. We're going to make sure they can never threaten anyone ever again. Across the galaxy, the news of Kepler spread like wildfire. Species that had ignored humanity for decades suddenly found themselves paying very close attention. The Medallions, ancient beings of living crystal, closed their borders for the first time in recorded history. The Moravi, masters of diplomacy and negotiation, went silent. The warrior species Kathrani, who had always looked down on humans as soft and weak, sent a single message to Earth: "We have no quarrel with you, High Counselor Threx." Received the battle report in his private chambers and spent a long time staring at the casualty figures. His crystalline form flickered with colors that no human could see, patterns that indicated deep confusion and growing fear. "This is impossible," he said to his advisors. "The Vrexy have destroyed civilizations far more advanced than humanity. How did these children defeat them so easily?" Perhaps the reports are exaggerated, suggested one of his advisors. Perhaps. But Threx didn't believe it. He had seen the sensor data. He had watched the recordings. Humanity hadn't just defeated the Vrekshi. They had annihilated them with brutal, terrifying efficiency. He remembered Ambassador Sullivan's words. Fine. We'll deal with it. He was beginning to understand what those words really meant. On the Pelorian homeworld, Fen watched the same recordings with very different feelings. He wasn't surprised. He had tried to warn everyone, but no one had listened. Now they were seeing what he had always known. Humans were not like other species. They didn't fight with proportion or restraint. When they went to war completely. They used every weapon, every tactic, every dirty trick their violent history had taught them. And they didn't stop until the threat was eliminated. Fen began sending messages to every Pelorian community he could reach. Stay away from human space, he warned them. Stay far, far away. What was coming next would be worse than anything they had seen at Kepler. He was right. 3 weeks later, the human fleet arrived at the Vrekshi homeworld. What they did there would haunt the galaxy for generations. But that is a story for another time. The galaxy had never seen anything like the response to Kepler. Within days of the battle, species that had ignored humanity for decades suddenly remembered that they shared the stars with these strange beings from the third planet of an unremarkable sun. The medallions were the first to react. High Counselor Threx called an emergency meeting of the Crystal Assembly, something that hadn't happened in over 2,000 years. The great chamber filled with beings of living crystal, their bodies catching the light and scattering it into patterns that conveyed emotions too complex for words. We must close our borders, Threx said, his voice carrying notes of fear that his people had not heard from a leader in living memory. The weapons the humans used at Kepler, they could shatter us. Our crystalline bodies have no defense against such attacks. But we are not at war with humanity, protested one of the younger counselors. They have no reason to attack us. They had no reason to develop such weapons either. Yet they did. We cannot take the risk. Every medallion vessel will return to our home systems immediately. No exceptions. The order went out, and within a week, the medallion trade fleet, the largest in the galaxy, had vanished from foreign ports. Markets that had depended on medallion goods suddenly found themselves empty. Species that had never thought twice about the crystal beings now found themselves wondering what else they had been wrong about. The Moravi took a different approach. Their serpentine ambassadors, who had spent centuries building a reputation as the galaxy's greatest diplomats, suddenly went quiet. The Moravi Collective issued a single statement. We are reassessing our foreign relations and will resume diplomatic activities at a future date. Then they sealed their borders and began constructing defensive platforms around their home systems. Representative Keth, who had been present at Ambassador Sullivan's final address to the Council, took a personal leave of absence. She retreated to her family estates on the Moravi homeworld and spent her days watching human broadcasts, trying to understand how she had misjudged them so completely. The Kethrani response was perhaps the most surprising. The warrior species had always prided themselves on being the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. Their soldiers were feared, their weapons were respected, and their willingness to fight had made them powerful beyond their numbers. But after watching the recordings from Kepler, the Kethroni High Command made a decision that shocked their entire civilization. We will not challenge the humans, declared War Chief Brennan of the Third Fleet. Their methods are ... effective. Brutal, but effective. We gain nothing by provoking them. But we are warriors, protested one of his subordinates. We do not hide from battle. We are also survivors, Brennan replied. The humans have shown us something important today. There is always a bigger predator. We would be wise to remember that. It's a Kethrani message to Earth. We have no quarrel with you. It's the closest they had ever come to expressing fear of another species. It was also the smartest decision they had ever made. At the Galactic Council, panic was setting in. Representatives who had dismissed humanity as a minor concern now demanded emergency action. Species that had refused to help fight the Verxi now wanted protection from the humans. High Counselor Threx called an emergency session, the first in over 2 centuries. The great chamber filled with holographic representatives, each one more agitated than the last. "We must do something," demanded the representative from the silicon-based Krev. "The humans are out of control. They have developed weapons that threaten all of us. What do you suggest?" asked Threx. "Should we declare war on them? Send our fleets to Earth? Did you not see what they did to the Vrexi? Perhaps we could negotiate. Offer them something in exchange for disarmament. They asked us for help against the Vrexi. We refused. Do you really think they will trust us now?" The chamber erupted in argument. Species that had been allies for millennia suddenly turned on each other, each one blaming the others for ignoring the human threat. The Pelorians accused the Medallions of arrogance. The Moravi blamed the Kethrani for not seeing the humans as a danger. Everyone blamed the Council for failing to act. In the midst of the chaos, a message arrived. Ambassador Nora Sullivan was requesting permission to address the Council. The chamber fell silent. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Threx nodded slowly. "Let her speak." Nora appeared in the center of the chamber, her holographic image slightly flickering. She looked older than she had a year ago, with new lines around her eyes and a hardness to her expression that hadn't been there before. "The Council has made its position clear," she said, echoing the words she had spoken so many months ago. "You refused to help us. You expected us to run. You wrote us off as another minor species that would disappear into history." She paused, looking around at the assembled representatives. "You were wrong," Ambassador Sullivan Threx said carefully. "We understand that humanity felt abandoned. We regret that the Council was not able to provide assistance in time. But surely you can see that your response has been ... excessive. The weapons you used at Kepler, the tactics you employed, they violate every convention of civilized warfare." Civilized warfare. Nora laughed, though there was no humor in it. "High Counselor, the Vrexi consumed 17 species. They ate civilizations that had existed for millions of years. Did you convene emergency sessions for them? Did you pass resolutions condemning the Vrexi? Did you close your borders to protect the innocent?" The silence was answer enough. "We did what we had to do," Nora continued. "We will finish what we started. And when it's over, when the last Vrexi has been destroyed, humanity will be happy to discuss whatever the Council wants to discuss. But until then, your resolutions mean nothing. Your sanctions mean nothing. Your fear means nothing." She turned to leave, then paused. "You locked yourselves in with us, Counselor. I suggest you hope we're in a forgiving mood when this is over." Her image vanished, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. 3 hours later, the Council passed Resolution 7742, officially designated the Human Containment Protocols. All trade with humanity was banned. All communication was prohibited. All travel to or from human space was forbidden under penalty of severe sanctions. It was the harshest action the Council had ever taken against any species. It was also completely meaningless. Humanity didn't need galactic trade. They had spent the past year building their own supply lines, their own manufacturing, their own self-sufficient economy. The isolation that the Council meant as punishment was simply irrelevant. On Earth, Admiral Cole watched the Council broadcast with something between amusement and disgust. "They still don't understand," he said to his staff. "They think we care about their approval. They think we're doing this for respect or recognition." "Why are we doing it, sir?" asked one of the younger officers. Cole was quiet for a moment, staring at the screen where alien representatives continued their meaningless debates. "Survival," he said finally. "That's all that matters. We survive or we don't. Everything else is just noise." He turned away from the screen and pulled up the latest fleet reports. The main human armada was approaching Vraxious space. In a few weeks, the final battle would begin. "How many ships do we have now?" he asked. 412 combat vessels, sir, plus another 200 support ships and the new weapons." Ready for deployment? Dr. Green's team finished the last modifications yesterday. Cole nodded slowly. The weapons they had developed for this phase of the war were even more terrible than what they had used at Kepler, designed not just to kill but to sterilize, to ensure that nothing organic remained. Tell Admiral Vasquez she has clearance to proceed, he said. It's time to end this. Across the galaxy, species watched and waited. Some hoped that the humans would fail, that the Vrexy would somehow survive and balance would be restored. Others hoped that humanity would succeed, and then, satisfied with their victory, would leave the rest of the galaxy alone. Fen the Pelorian hoped for neither. He had studied humans too long to believe in simple outcomes. Whatever happened, Nix would change the galaxy forever. He just hoped his people would survive to see it. The Vrexy. War ended on a morning that no one on Earth would ever forget. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching as the last Vrexy hive world burned beneath them. The planet's surface glowed orange and red, the fires visible even from orbit. There was no celebration on the bridge. No cheering, no congratulations, no relief. Just silence and the soft hum of machines doing their work. Admiral, said Lieutenant Kevin Park, his voice barely above a whisper. Scans confirm complete sterilization. No organic life signs remaining on the surface. Lena nodded slowly. She had given that order. She had watched as weapons designed by human scientists rained down on a world that had existed for millions of years. She had made the choice that no other species in the galaxy had been willing to make. How many worlds is that now? She asked. 7, ma'am. 7 Vrexiness worlds destroyed. Total estimated Verseat casualties? Park hesitated. Approximately 4 billion, including all remaining hive queens and egg clusters. 4 billion. The number seemed abstract, impossible to grasp. Alina had studied history. She knew that humans had killed millions of their own kind in past wars. But this was something different. This was extinction. Complete, deliberate extinction of an entire species.
Send the message, she said.
The war is over. On Earth, Admiral Cole received the transmission in his office. He read it 3 times, then set down the tablet and walked to his window. Outside, the sun was setting over the Pacific Ocean, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. They had won. Against all odds, against the expectations of every other species in the galaxy, humanity had defeated the Vrexy. They had taken a threat that had destroyed 17 civilizations and erased it from existence. But there was no joy in Cole's heart, only a heavy, hollow feeling that he suspected would never fully go away. He drafted a message to be broadcast across all galactic frequencies. It was brief, only a few sentences. The Vrexy threat has been eliminated. Humanity is secure. To the Galactic Council, our borders are open. We're ready to talk whenever you are. Then he sat down in his chair and waited. The galaxy remained locked down for another 6 months. Species that had sealed their borders were afraid to open them again. The council met in endless sessions, debating what to do about the human problem. But mostly, everyone just waited to see what humanity would do next. It was the Pelorians who broke the silence. Fen, now elderly by his species standards, convinced his government to send a diplomatic mission to Earth. He went himself. Despite warnings from his family and colleagues, someone has to make first contact, he said. Someone has to find out what kind of species humanity has become. What he found surprised him. Earth was not celebrating. There were no victory parades, no triumphant monuments, no displays of military power. Instead, Fen found a planet in mourning. Memorials had been erected not for human soldiers, but for the 17 civilizations the Vrexy had consumed. Schools taught children about the lost species, their cultures and achievements, their art and science that would never be seen again. And in quiet corners of the world, humans gathered to mourn the Vrexy themselves. Fen requested a meeting with Admiral Cole, now the most powerful military leader in human history. He expected to find a warrior, hard and cold and triumphant. Instead, he found an old man sitting in a garden, watching birds fly between the trees. "Ambassador Fen," Cole said, gesturing to an empty seat beside him. "I've read your work on human psychology. You understand us better than most." "I thought I did," Fen replied, settling into the chair. "Now I'm not so sure." They sat in silence for a while, watching the birds. Finally, Fen asked the question that had been burning in his mind since he arrived. "Why? You destroyed the Virekshi completely. You erased them from existence. And now you mourn them? I don't understand." Cole was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with sadness. "Because we didn't want this. We asked for help. We begged the council to do something, anything, before it was too late. If they had listened, maybe we could have found another way. Maybe we could have contained the Virekshi, driven them back, found some solution that didn't require us to become monsters ourselves. But they consumed 17 species. They were going to consume you. And so, we did what we had to do. We became killers on a scale the galaxy has never seen. We developed weapons that should never exist. We made choices that will haunt us for generations."
How?
Cole turned to face Fen. And the Pelorian saw something he hadn't expected in the old man's eyes. Grief. Deep. Profound grief. "The hardest part isn't what we did," Cole continued. "The hardest part is knowing that we were capable of it. Knowing that inside every human being is the potential for exactly what we did to the Virekshi. That scares us more than any alien threat ever could." Fen thought about this for a long time. He thought about his studies, about the human capacity for both great kindness and terrible violence. He thought about the memorials he had seen, the mourning he had witnessed. "And yet you stopped," he said finally. "The Virekshi are gone, but you haven't continued your campaign. You could have kept going. You could have conquered the galaxy." "We could have," Cole agreed. "We chose not to. That's the other thing about humans, Ambassador. We're capable of terrible things, but we're also capable of choosing not to do them. The question is always which choice we'll make." The Galactic Council lifted the lockdown 2 years after the war ended. Relations with humanity were never quite the same. The other species had learned something about humans that they couldn't forget. They knew now that these young beings from the unremarkable star were capable of absolute destruction when they believed it was necessary. But they also learned something else. Humanity had fought not just for themselves, but for the species they had never known. They had avenged civilizations that had died before humans even developed spaceflight. And when the war was over, they had mourned their enemies even as they buried them. High Counselor Threx, in his final address before retirement, tried to put the lesson into words. When humans say they will deal with something, the galaxy should pay attention. Not because humans are the strongest, or the smartest, or the most advanced, but because when humans commit to something, they commit completely. They sacrifice everything, risk everything, do whatever they believe is necessary, and then, when it's over, they question whether it was worth it. He paused, his crystalline form catching the light one last time. Perhaps that is what makes them truly dangerous. They are capable of greatness and horror in equal measure, and they never stop asking themselves which one they have chosen. 50 years passed. The galaxy changed in ways no one could have predicted. Humanity became a major power, not through conquest, but through the simple fact that no one wanted to cross them. The Council reformed its policies, becoming faster to respond to threats. The mistakes of the Virekshi era were not repeated. Then a new species made contact. They were aggressive, territorial, and dismissive of the older civilizations. They demanded tribute and threatened war. The Council's response was different this time. High Counselor Zen, a young medallion who had grown up hearing stories about the HFY War, sent a simple message. "We recommend you speak with our human colleagues before taking any further action. They have experience with situations like this." The new species, curious about these humans everyone seemed to fear, sent a delegation to Earth. They emerged from that meeting 3 days later, subdued and cooperative. They joined the Council as peaceful members and never caused problems again. No one ever asked what the humans had said to them. No one wanted to know, but old Fen, now ancient and retired to his home world, smiled when he heard the news. Humans, he had learned, were not monsters. They were not heroes. They were simply human, complicated, contradictory, capable of both amazing compassion and terrifying determination. And the galaxy, finally, had learned to respect that on Earth. In a garden that had grown wild over the decades, an old memorial stood beneath the shade of oak trees. It listed the names of every species the Vexi had consumed. 17 civilizations remembered by the one that had avenged them, and at the bottom, added years after the war ended, was a small inscription, also remembered, the Vrexi, who were what they were and are gone now. May we be better than our worst moments. Humans would never forget what they had done. They would never fully forgive themselves for it. But they would keep trying to be better, to choose wisely, to find solutions that didn't require them to become the thing they feared most. That, in the end, was the most human thing of all.